you were set a task to come up with the music and whiskey pairings, and I think what it really reveals is there's this kind of visceral power in music that you make these very strong connections, but there's a similar kind of power in whiskey, from even just the aroma when you put your nose to a glass. It can really take your time to a time and a place, like music can as well. So how did you find it, like putting these two worlds together, which have got very, very strong connections? So how did you find it, kind of making these whiskey music matches?
Well, first, Richard, can I just say thank you so much for giving this incredible task to me. It's been loads of fun for a start, but actually it's blown my mind. It's been one of these experiences that I never thought I would actually be asked to take part in. I mean, I love whiskey, and as you say, whiskey has this incredible complexity and strength and vibrancy to it. Not only is it one of Scotland's greatest exports, it's got a sort of world unto itself. And music is complex as well, and it has all these micro genres and different styles and eras and so on. And alcohol and music, alcohol and dancing go very well together. In fact, they're inseparable. So the worlds of whiskey and the worlds of music going together seem absolutely natural. Now, when I was asked to pair 12 different malts from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society with music, I wondered whether they wanted me to pair it with Scottish traditional music. I mean, obviously, maybe some people who aren't that familiar with Scotland might think that that's the only music that gets created and listened to in Scotland is fiddle music and bagpipe music and folk music and singer-songwriters and so on. And obviously that's not the case. Scotland's a modern country like anywhere else. So I did, before I started, I asked, is it okay if I pair the whiskies with all kinds of different genres from around the world and through history as well? I'm a rock and roller, really, but I suppose the bigger umbrella is that I'm knowledgeable and I'm about pop music, and alternative music, I suppose, specifically. So indie music, rock, punk, hip hop, electronica, reggae, etc., etc. That's my kind of expertise, and it's, as you can tell by the wall of music behind me, it's something I've spent my entire life indulging in. I'm lucky enough to have turned my teenage hobby into my job. So I wanted to make sure that the remit was right, that I wasn't pairing things up with the wrong kind of music, or that you wanted something specifically Scottish. But when it was kind of like, no, it's completely up to you. Now, I have very wide-ranging tastes as well. I love, as I've just mentioned, reggae and soul music and blues and jazz and so on. I also like metal and rock and punk and things with noisy guitars. I love electronica. I love hip hop and rap and grime and so on. So I sort of, in the back of my mind, I knew I had a wide palette to draw from musically as well as whiskey wise. And I sort of thought to myself, I'm just going to play this by ear. I'm going to try each whiskey as I go along and really savor each whiskey and go through some of the tasting notes. And sometimes that would lead me in a certain direction, the tasting notes, but really try and go on instinct. So if I thought, for example, I went through them chronologically, if you like, 1 to 12. So I went through Young and Sprightly was the first one I tried, and as it says, as the title sort of leads you to believe, it is sprightly, it is sort of effervescent, and so I tried to think of a type of music that I loved that would fit that sort of description. And then, of course, I would listen to the music while drinking the whiskey. And there were a couple of wrong foots, a couple of mishaps. I went down a couple of cul-de-sacs and went, no, I don't think that one really does suit the whiskey. But quite often, one of the first or second genres that I would try would fit quite nicely. So actually, it was quite tricky to begin with because I'd never done this before. But once I'd done, I don't know, maybe when I was on to whiskey number 3, I really had the hang of it. And I also, if you read the captions on the website that go with every malt, you'll see that I had some fun with the descriptions as well. I was kind of shooting from the hip a bit. I've written a couple of books. I'm a journalist, so I quite like rock journalism, and you know, I had a lot of fun. I was quite playful with the descriptions. So the short answer is it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully I've done you proud.
You've definitely done us proud, Vic. The tasting notes, I think, are fantastic, and there's a lot to enjoy for anyone in there. And you know, as you say, there's 12 flavor profiles, so we're covering the complete range of, you know, society whiskies and all the different characters. And in terms of the music, there's something for everyone. There's a dram for everyone, and there's a kind of musical genre for everyone. Did you find, like, going through the flavor profiles, obviously having a sample of each flavor profile in your glass, did the whiskey speak to you in a musical way? For some of them, it may have done, but you mentioned Young and Sprightly and Dream Pop. That came to you quite quickly. Was that the case with all of them, or were you having to dig a wee bit deeper with other ones?
Yeah, some of them I had to dig a little bit deeper, because I'm by no means a whiskey expert. So I love whiskey, and I've been to the Whisky Society countless times, and I really enjoy my visits there. And anyone who lives in Edinburgh or Scotland should definitely get themselves a membership and head along. And if you're traveling to Edinburgh on holiday, for example, if you're a tourist in Edinburgh, then try and befriend someone who's a member so that you can pop in. So I'm a whiskey fan, but I'm by no means an expert. I would never class myself. I know I've got friends who will, nose a glass and come out with the tasting notes, and sometimes it's comedic almost, you know, the sort of boil in the bag shepherd's pie or whatever it may be. But I'm not an expert, although I know my heavily peated, I know my, you know, my Speysides and my Highland whiskies, you know, and I know when a whiskey's good, and I can, you know, differentiate between the complexities of different whiskies, but not like yourself, I wouldn't imagine, you know, someone who's trained and knowledgeable. So yeah, some of the musical pairings were a little trickier than others. But for example, Juicy Oak and Vanilla, I mean, immediately I love reggae music, and it just had that kind of, you know, ginger, pineapple, the kinds of flavors you maybe taste in Caribbean cooking and Caribbean cocktails and so on. And you know, that kind of music is sweet, and it's got an air of warmth and friendliness, but it's also got that kind of slightly exotic feel to it. So something like that fell into place really well, I thought. But as I got more peaty, I didn't know which way to go. As the whiskeys sort of get more peated, to me, they get more powerful and they get more potent, and they actually get more potent alcohol strength wise as well as flavor wise. And so that kind of I felt like I should go with slightly more potent music. So as I get more peated, it goes into, you know, psychedelia and punk and rock, which, you know, obviously I love all these genres, and it's on, you know, almost when I was tasting a peated whiskey, it would grab me. And of course, you can't drink 12 drams in a night, or you'll fall over. So I would do 2 or 3 at a time, just so that I didn't overwhelm my taste buds. Yeah, some of them came to me quicker than others. I mean, as I say, spicy and dry, that one took a wee while. That was whiskey number 4 on the sort of flavor chart, and there were little bits of licorice and you know, that kind of spice coming through. And I remembered back to my teenage years of being slightly gothy, and listening to The Cure and Susie and the Banshees and all that sort of stuff. Licorice was a flavor that you would have. You know, Pernod, I remember, would be a drink that people would have mixed with blackcurrant cordial. So this would be a teenage goth kind of drink. And those flavors started coming from the whiskey, and so I started playing those kinds of tunes, Bauhaus, Nick Cave, you know, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and it just seemed to fit together nicely. But that wasn't necessarily my first choice in that genre. I tried a couple of other things first, but then I settled on that, and it seemed right.
Well, I recommend everyone to check out the tasting notes and the musical suggestions that you've come up with. I've got a wee oily and coastal dram in my glass tonight. So this you paired with electronica and kind of post-rock music, right?
Mm. Oh, it's absolutely delicious. It's funny because some people sort of say when I was telling friends that I was involved in this project and doing this, they were sort of saying, "Oh, I like the sort of dried fruit, rich whiskies, the sherry casks and the Highland whiskies and so on." And other friends would say, "Oh no, I like the smoky Lagavulins and Lafroigs and the peaty ones." The kind of oily and coastal it's got salt, it's got seawater. It takes me when I was sipping this one and I was doing my music pairings, I just think of electronica and post rock as a kind of slightly oblique atmospheric style of music. It's not about pop songs. It's not about immediate there's the verse, there's the chorus, there's the hooky bit, 3 minutes and you're out. It's about extended passages of music. It's about sonic tapestries, if you like. And this oily and coastal made me feel like I was kind of standing on a harbour on the west coast of Scotland, getting battered by the sea, but kind of enjoying it. A lot of people who haven't had that happen to them sort of wonder, why would you go somewhere where you're going to have to wear a cagoule all the time and a scarf and a beanie hat and gloves and get battered by the elements? But actually, there's a real adventure and fun to that. And so this whiskey actually reminded me of that sort of experience and brought back those kinds of experiences. And I kind of think of Scottish landscapes and sea and that kind of, and also Iceland, actually. I think of that country, which I've been lucky enough to visit, as pairing with that kind of slightly oblique electronic sound. So yeah, I went for that electronica and post rock, and I gave a few suggested tracks. One of Scotland's finest bands, Mogwai, I put them in the mix. They've just had a #1 album as well, which is absolutely astonishing because they're quite a sort of uncompromising, uncommercial band. And after 25 years of making this kind of idiosyncratic music, they went to #1. So I included a track from their #1 album. Also Sigur Rós, a band from Iceland, who are world famous now, but they do have this kind of esoteric, ethereal feel to them, which I feel went really well with this. I also included Boards of Canada, an incredible Scottish electronic duo of brothers who live not far from me, actually, in East Lothian. I think they're sort of Dunbar way, and by the sea. I bet you the sea and the coastal views and landscape all influence their music. And as a fourth suggested track, I used Square Pusher, who is an absolutely astonishing electronica producer, quite uncompromising again, but he can make some of the most beautiful esoteric music you've ever heard, full of melody, full of different rhythmic ideas, and with a sort of otherworldly quality. So I chose one of his more modern tracks, but also slightly more gentle tracks. But I think this genre goes really well. I mean, how about yourself, Richard? Do you think it goes well?
I think it goes incredibly well. But what I've listened to some of the music that you've paired up with the different flavor profiles, and what I've found is it's almost like when you read a tasting note, and then that brings things to your mind, and it kind of provokes thoughts even before you've had them. And the music's kind of done the same thing when I've sat with the dram. For example, the Dream Pop, I sat and had a Young and Sprightly with some cocktail twins that you suggested, and it just sounded fantastic, and it kind of enhanced the whiskey. And I suppose that's the point of this, that in each of these pairings there's something there which it kind of improves both experiences of the whiskey and the music.
Oh, I'm so delighted you say that, Richard. That is exactly, obviously, what I wanted to do. You know, as I said earlier on, it was a little bit daunting being asked to do something like this because you don't want to make a mess of it. You don't want to screw it up. Pair whiskeys with certain kinds of music genres and different tracks, and then everyone's like, nah, I don't agree. Now, tasting food or drinks or anything, whiskey in this case, is such a subjective thing, and listening to music is also a subjective thing. I mean, consuming any kind of art, looking at a painting. I mean, my girlfriend and I, we have very similar tastes in some things, and then other things. I love abstract impressionism and more avant-garde painting and collage and so on. She doesn't at all. She likes, perfection in art and sort of line drawing and design and so on, which I also like, but there are certain things, and it's exactly the same with whiskey. Some people will like a fruity, spicy whiskeys, other people will like something more peated. And again, with music, you might drink, or someone might drink the Young and Sprightly and not identify with the Cocteau Twins or Beach House or Washed Out or some of the tracks I put with it. They may hear something else. So there's always that challenge. But I would like people, much like yourself, to just kind of sit back, pour yourself a dram or two or three, and just go with me. And hopefully, as you've just said, the music does enhance the flavor of the whiskey. Because, I mean, as you mentioned, the tasting notes, sometimes the tasting notes are like hilarious to me. I mean, I've got some of them here. I love, rhubarb and custard sweets. I mean, who would think that a whiskey would taste like that? Or, sticky toffee pudding. I suppose that's maybe a bit more obvious. Breakfast cereal or pine or hospital laundry room. I mean, these are quite, again, avant-garde in a way, comparisons. But once you're in the mode and you're in the zone, kind of smelling, tasting, really relishing the whiskies, then you can start to connect with these tasting notes, and as you say, hopefully with the music. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure doing this.
Brilliant. Well, I can only recommend that everyone dives into the pairings and the tasting notes. Beautifully done, Vic, and a great selection of music. And we've got a Spotify playlist with all your choices for all the 12 flavor profiles. So that's available. And you're in Unfiltered magazine with all your pairings and all the details about what you've done. So I raise a glass to you for your good work, your dedicated efforts in going through all 12 flavor profiles and finding appropriate music. So cheers to Vic Galloway.
Cheers, Slange, to you. And thank you for asking me to do this. I've enjoyed, obviously, listening to music, but drinking these magnificent whiskies and thinking outside the box. I mean, everyone wants a challenge. I certainly do. I love challenges and new projects to get stuck into. And this has been a total pleasure. So I'm delighted to have been asked. And yes, I hope everyone enjoys the music and the blurb, the captions I put with every whiskey. They're fun and playful, hopefully. So dig in and enjoy. Cheers, Richard.
Definitely. Cheers, Vic. We'll see you at the vaults before too long, I hope.
Oh, definitely. You can't stop me. As soon as the restrictions are lifted, I'm there.